This doesn't seem quite right, does it? How about this? Nah, it's not really that comfortable. What about this? No. Guys, I'm struggling to find a comfortable position to do our bedtime story in. So I guess I'll just do what I've always done. I hope you can find a comfortable position for tonight's bedtime story. Maybe you're on a couch or your bed. Maybe you're in pajamas. Anyway, we are on part 7 of The Winds of Redvale, and this is the last part of our story with the Perez children. We get to find out what happens. Now, this is from the Red Letter Challenge for Kids. So, let's get started. Malachi, Isabella, Aiden, Emily, and Red waited hours in the swamp in the hope that Gasper the Mud Man would reappear. Malachi even dove beneath the swampy water to find him, but it was no use. Remember that? That was super sad. The Mud Man sacrificed himself for the kids. Gasper was gone. Finally, darkness began to set in. "We need to be leaving," Malachi said. "It's not safe for us to stay here after dark." Emily was about to burst out in anger when Malachi added, "We don't want Gasper's sacrifice to be for nothing. He would want us to go too." Emily knew Malachi was right, so as much as she hated it, she didn't protest as they continued on. Their tiny boat carried them across the final stretch of swamp, but Emily didn't remember much of it. She was in a daze as they clambered out of the boat and hiked for who knows how long. After stopping to sleep, they finally reached the shore of a wide open sea, just as the sun was rising. A strong west wind ruffled Emily's hair, and looming before them was a huge wooden ship, the old-fashioned kind with big, billowing sails, like you read about in stories. "Are we taking this ship?" Emily asked. "We are," Malachi said. "The Scarlet Sea is the final leg of our journey. You're almost home now." Good. Emily didn't know if she could take any more of the danger. She just wanted to be home with her dog, cats, and bird, who had to be missing her terribly. "Welcome to the HMS Lazarus," announced Red, leading them up the gangplank. Aboard the ship, they were greeted by a crew of smiling sailors and an officer named Captain Seaweed Stevenson. "The wind is strong, and God calls us to go," said Malachi, slipping up next to Emily at the ship's rail while they left port. Together they watched as the shoreline disappeared and the west wind filled their sails. "I know your heart is broken," said Malachi, "but God knows what you're feeling. Would you like to pray together?" Emily shrugged. She really didn't feel like praying or doing much of anything. She looked out on the far horizon, and pretty soon she spotted 2 ships moving in their direction. "What's that?" she said, pointing at the ships. Malachi put a hand on her shoulder and gasped. "Oh no," he muttered. "What are they?" Emily asked. "Pirates." Emily's heart dropped like a heavy anchor. She didn't think things could get any worse, but they just did. Aiden loved stories about pirates, but he wasn't so sure he wanted to meet any in real life. The strangest thing was that none of the sailors on their ship were running to their battle stations. They went about their normal business as if there were no pirates in sight. "Why aren't the sailors getting the cannons ready?" Aiden asked Malachi. "And what about the swords? Why doesn't anyone have swords? We're sitting ducks." Malachi stroked his beard and stared at the 2 approaching pirate ships. "These aren't the kind of pirates who carry swords and shoot cannons." "They aren't?" said Isabella. "Then we're okay. The pirates can't hurt us then." "Oh, they can hurt us all right, just not in the way you think. They're called the pestering pirates because they pester people with doubts and discouragement. They can steal your hopes, your dreams, and your faith, our most precious cargo of all." "Well, they can try all they want, but they can't discourage me," said Aiden. "Be on your guard," said Malachi. "Be very careful around them." The 2 pirate vessels pulled up alongside their ship, one on either side, and the pestering pirates hurled grappling hooks to pull the boats together. Then the pirates swarmed over the sides and onto their ship, shouting and screaming, just like regular pirates. But Malachi was right. They looked like pirates, eye patches and all, and they smelled like pirates. Pretty foul. But they didn't carry swords or knives. They attacked using their words. "Why are you bringing treasure chests to a king?" said one pirate, sidling up to Aiden. "What does a king need treasure for? He's already rich." Strange. That's exactly what Aiden had said when they began their mission. This pirate followed Aiden all over the ship, pestering him with the same doubts over and over. Malachi shouldn't have asked you to go through so many dangers. Just for 3 little treasure chests? It's not right. "Malachi hasn't steered us wrong," Aiden said. "Hasn't steered you wrong? You've been attacked by a windstorm, sand stallions, fog, and sticky fingers. It seems that he can't do anything but steer you into trouble. Even your little friend Red has given up on Malachi." "What are you talking about?" Aiden asked. "That red fox just jumped into a lifeboat and rowed away. He's deserting all of you. Some friend he is." Aiden was stunned. After all they had gone through, Red was saving his own skin? They never should have trusted him. He's a fox after all, and foxes are sly. "Worst of all," the pirate said, moving really close to Aiden, "Malachi wants you to learn to be a servant." "A servant?" "He's been trying to convince you from the very beginning not to care so much about being first." "But what's wrong with being first? You've worked hard your whole life, so you deserve it. Why should you serve the losers of this world?" After hearing these words over and over for an hour, Aiden had to admit the pirates were starting to make sense. Isabella decided it was safest to avoid the pirates, so she went below deck and slipped behind a barrel of food, where she quietly read by candlelight. She munched on an apple as she read, but she nearly choked on a mouthful when a voice suddenly spoke to her behind one of the barrels. "Malachi wants you to forgive your friend Hannah, and that's not right," said the voice. Stepping out from behind a barrel was a tall, skinny pirate with a large, jagged scar down his right cheek. "Hannah doesn't deserve your forgiveness," the pirate added, moving closer. "We all need forgiveness," Isabella said with a scowl, "and we all need to forgive, so just leave me alone." The pirate stepped in front of her. "Nonsense. Hannah dumped you as a friend just because you were moving away. Then she tried to make it sound like you should be saying sorry to her. Outrageous." Strange. Isabella thought the very same thing when Hannah got mad at her for moving. "You see this scar?" the pirate said, pointing to his cheek. "I got this from a friend, and then he asked me to forgive him for cutting my face. But why should I forgive him? I have to carry this scar for the rest of my life." The pirate got so close to Isabella that it almost seemed as if his voice were in her head. "Hannah gave you a scar too, and it's a scar that you'll have to carry for all your life. Don't forgive her." Isabella had to admit, the pirates were starting to make sense. Emily crept to the front of the ship, where the 3 treasure chests were being stored. She knelt on the deck and stared at the chests, wondering what was inside them that could be so valuable. What was worth all the dangers they had gone through? What was worth the sacrifice of Gasper? "Go ahead and open them," said a pirate who suddenly appeared right behind her. Emily nearly jumped out of her shoes. How did the pirate sneak up on her without making a sound? It was very creepy. This pirate was a short, roundish guy with a mouthful of the most rotten teeth and very bad breath. He went by the name of Nag. "There's no harm in opening the treasure chests," Nag said, "but Malachi said not to. These are gifts for the king." "Bah! You and your brother and sister have carried these treasure chests across desert and mountain and forest and swamp. You deserve to know what's in them." Emily had to admit, the pirates were starting to make sense. "Gasper gave his life so you can deliver these treasure chests," Nag continued. "You should find out what he gave his life for." "Maybe you're right," Emily said. "Of course I'm right." Nag grinned so big that it seemed as if his face might split. Emily reached for the first treasure chest, then paused. "But these are gifts for the king. They're not for us." "Then make them your gifts, Emily. You're always giving to others. Isn't it time for you to be getting? You carried these chests for miles and miles. You should at least get to be part of the treasure. You deserve it. You earned it. Nag was right. It didn't seem fair that the king would get all of this treasure. So, with trembling hands, Emily reached out, unlatched the lid, and took a deep breath. Then she opened the treasure chest and looked inside. Emily gasped. The chest was empty, completely empty. Emily threw open the second chest. Empty. She threw open the third chest. Also empty. They had done all this work and traveled all this way for 3 empty treasure chests? Emily let out a shout so loud that it could probably be heard by every fish in the sea. Their ship, the HMS Lazarus, was dead in the water. The pirates had convinced all of the sailors that their work was useless. So the sailors stopped sailing and the ship stopped moving. The ship just sat there in the still water, filled with a lot of unhappy and angry people. Aiden and Isabella were especially angry when Emily told them that the treasure chests were empty. You have to trust me, Malachi said. There's a reason for all of this. Is there also a reason Red deserted us? Emily snapped. There could be. We've trusted you every step of the way, and what has it gotten us? Emily's right, said Isabella, and Aiden nodded in agreement. Malachi didn't respond. He just looked incredibly sad. For 3 entire days, their ship stood in the water going nowhere, and their supplies began to dwindle. People fought over fresh water and biscuits. Everyone stopped giving and serving and forgiving and praying and caring. The pirates' victory was complete. Or so they thought. On the 3rd day after the pirate attack, Emily was sitting below deck, feeling miserable, when she suddenly heard loud voices coming from above. A commotion was stirring. Probably more pirates, she muttered toward Aiden. Probably. Ahoy! Came a voice from above. Immediately, Emily suddenly became very alert. She sat up straight. The voice was strangely familiar. Ahoy! Permission to come aboard. It couldn't be. I say, permission to come aboard, shouted the voice again. Emily leaped to her feet and took off running. Nag tried to stand in her way, but she plowed right through him as she pounded up the stairs to reach the upper deck. She dashed to the rail, with Isabella and Aiden right behind. Malachi was waiting for them with a big grin on his face. He extended a hand toward the water. There was Gasper. Riding on the back of Bob the cave whale, and standing next to Gasper was Red the fox. But how? We thought you died, Emily said, giving Gasper a big squishy hug when he came aboard the ship. That whirlpool did mess me up, Gasper said, but our enemy forgot one important thing. Plants grow back. Plants die, but they regrow too. That's so true, said Emily, staring at Gasper's body, which was made of mud and plants. Several flowers had even sprouted on his arm, and he plucked 2 of them and handed them to Emily and Isabella. Don't believe any of what he's saying, said Nag the pirate, sliding up beside them, but Gasper let out a roar that sent all of the pirates running for cover. Then the big mud man looked down on the 3 Perez children and gave them a huge grin. Believe it, he said. I do, said Emily, putting the flower in her hair. Their ship had been dead in the water, but now it was alive again. Sounds like a certain holiday, doesn't it? As the kids soon learned, Red hadn't deserted them. He had left in the lifeboat to bring back help. I was shocked when I found Gasper alive and hunting for us, Red explained, and I was even more surprised when Bob the cave whale showed up and volunteered to swim us out to the ship. Evidently, cave whales can swim in water just as easily as they can swim across land. So Red and Gasper had climbed onto Bob's back, and they took off on their rescue mission. Within an hour after their arrival, all of the pirates had fled to their ships and sailed off in defeat. It was amazing how life came back to the HMS Lazarus. The sails filled once again with the west wind, and the ship cut across the sea. Bob the cave whale raced alongside, frolicking with a group of dolphins, while Red led everyone in singing. Even Isabella sang on tune, at least for a couple notes. At last, the ship reached safe harbor, where Malachi said they would meet the king. Aiden expected to see a huge castle, with thick stone walls and high towers. But instead, they found a simple, small, square home made out of white limestone rock. The tiny house sat near the shore of the sea. The house reminded him of something, but what was it? The three Perez children lugged the 3 treasure chests into this small 3-room house. One of the rooms was used to house sheep. Talking sheep, of course. In the main room sat the king, but not on a big fancy throne. The king sat on a simple wooden chair, which Malachi said the king had made himself. "He's a carpenter, you know," Malachi whispered. The king also didn't wear fancy clothes, just white and red robes, and he didn't have any diamonds or gold anywhere in sight. The only thing that sparkled were his rich, brown eyes. Aiden was terrified when they placed their 3 treasure chests at the feet of the king. What was he going to think when he opened them and discovered they were completely empty? Would he get angry? Would he blame them for losing the treasure? Holding his breath, Aiden watched as the king reached down for the first treasure chest. "This gift is from Aiden, I believe," said the king, staring him in the eyes and smiling. "Oh no, oh no, oh no!" The king opened the chest and light spilled out of it like liquid. What in the world? Then the king reached in and pulled out a lantern, the very same lantern that Goggles had used to guide Aiden through the foggy forest. "Thank you, Aiden," said the king, raising the light high. "You learned to serve others, and you spread the light of God. Why, I understand you've already begun to make plans to teach Goggles how to play baseball when you return home. That is the mark of a true servant." Aiden's mouth dropped open. How did he know that? But it was true. Aiden told himself he would become friends with Goggles the moment they got home. Maybe Goggles could even teach him how to bowl and how to lose gracefully. Then the king reached for the second treasure chest, opened it, reached in, and pulled out a sort of small glass bottle. It looked like medicine of some sort. "Isabella, thank you for your gift, the gift of forgiveness," the king said, holding the medicine high. "You taught Bob to forgive, and you learned to forgive Hannah in your heart. You showed that forgiveness can heal your scars." This was when Aiden noticed for the first time that the king had scars as well. Finally, the king turned to the 3rd treasure chest, and Aiden was no longer afraid it would be empty. He was just curious what was in it. The king reached in and pulled out a clay pot, and when he opened it, he showed everyone that it contained salt. "Thank you, Emily, for your gift," the king said. "You are the salt of the earth. You give life flavor. You also gave the gift of your friendship to an ornery red fox." "Hey, who are you calling ornery?" exclaimed Red. "You even gave the gift of friendship to a mud man that everyone else feared." Aiden and Isabella, sitting on either side of Emily, gave their little sister a hug. "I also know what you plan to do when you get home," the king said, leaning toward Emily. "Instead of worrying about Mary Ann's birthday party, you're planning to invite all of the forgotten kids in your class to your party. You're going to show them that they aren't forgotten, and that is the greatest gift you can give anyone." The king rose to his feet and looked out upon the tiny group. Aiden, Emily, and Isabella all bowed their heads because isn't that what you're supposed to do when you're in the presence of royalty? "Well done, good and faithful servants," the king said. "We did all that we were asked, delivering the treasures," Isabella said, looking up. "Have we earned our way home?" She was dying to curl up in her old familiar bed with a good book. The king paused before answering. "I'm afraid that delivering these gifts is not enough to earn your way back home. These gifts cannot save you." Aiden's heart froze. "But we completed every challenge that came our way," he said. "We did what Malachi asked us to do. What more do you want?" As soon as the words left Aiden's mouth, he was afraid he had offended the king. But the king did not seem upset, not in the least. "Yes, you did complete the challenge by bringing your gifts to me," he said, "but it is not enough." "Then why can't we go home?" Emily said. "Please, just tell us what we have to do to work our way back. We'll do anything." The king's eyes scanned each of the children, and his words were hard to bear. "Kids, there's nothing you can do to save yourself." "You mean there's no way home? But we never wanted to come here in the first place," Aiden exclaimed. It felt as if a large rock had fallen on top of him, and it was getting really hard to breathe. Emily felt a jolt of panic and anger. "Are we stuck here forever?" "I didn't say that," said the king with gentle words, soft as snowflakes. "I said there is nothing you can do to save yourself. You can spend your entire life in Redvale, completing many wonderful tasks and doing great things, but in 100 lifetimes, you cannot earn your way back home. Then why did we even do those challenges and carry those gifts? Isabella asked. The gifts you carried were for you, to help you become the people you were created to be, said the king. I am not a king who needs gifts or needs to be served. I have everything I could ever need. I am here to serve you. Serve us? Emily said. But you're a king. Don't you see, children? I am your way home. You cannot save yourselves with gifts and treasures. Only my grace can bring you home. The words rushed over Emily like a strong wind. It's been me all along, said the king. I was the one who sent Malachi to you so he could guide you with words of wisdom from the ancient book. And I worked through Melchior and Baltz, the camel and the donkey who carried you through the desert, mountain, and forest. I even worked through Red, who was smart enough to seek help at the end. Smart? Did he just say I was smart? Asked Red. I also worked through Gasper, who sacrificed himself so you could live. I sent the wind that brought you here in the first place, and I sent the wind that billowed the sails of your ship. Suddenly, it all became clear as day to Emily, and she laughed out loud. I am the way back home, the king continued, rising from his chair and motioning toward a simple door at the back of the house. The door had been right in front of them all along, but Emily thought it just led to another room. This door will take you home, the king said. Suddenly, Gasper started crying and couldn't stop blubbering. By shedding tears, the soggy creature became twice as soggy. I'm going to miss you guys, said Mudman. This caused Red to start crying, and Bob the cave whale, too. Even Malachi was tearing up. Emily, Isabella, and Aiden gave all of them one last hug, and then they turned toward the door. They had to squeeze through the sheep pen to reach it. Safe travels home, mate, said one of the sheep with an Australian accent. This was a very strange world, and Emily was going to miss it. The Perez children gave one last look at their friends. Malachi, Red, Gasper, and Bob. Bob couldn't fit inside the house, but he was able to peek through the front door. Then the three kids took each other's hands as the king opened the door in front of them, and they stepped through into a blaze of light. To this day, the kids from their church group still talk about how the three Perez children just suddenly walked out of a house that was part of a Bible museum exhibit. What were they doing inside the exhibit? It was also weird that all three Perez kids had a golden globe about them, but even stranger. Some kids claimed they saw the face of a red talking fox standing in the doorway and waving goodbye and shouting that he loved them. Others said they saw a giant slimy swamp monster blowing kisses, and some even claimed to see a monstrous stone whale off in the background grinning. Most of the kids decided it was just an unusual special effects in the museum's display. When the Perez children returned home, life went on. But life didn't go on as normal. For Isabella, Aiden, and Emily, nothing was ever the same again. And that was just fine with them. The end. Thank you so much for sharing with this story. This story was supposed to teach us all about God's grace. God's grace is completely free, and Jesus is the way to eternal life. And that is such an amazing gift. Hopefully you have learned how to spend time with God by being. You've learned about forgiving other people. You've learned about serving and giving, and now going and sharing the good news of Jesus Christ with others. That's the whole point of this entire story. God doesn't need your good works or your challenges, but it's for us to be the people that He created us to be, so that we can share His love with everyone that we meet. Will you guys pray with me? You can repeat after me. Dear God, thank you for these challenges as they help us become more like you. Thank you for your grace that will bring us to heaven one day. We love you. Thank you for loving us. Amen. I'm so glad that you've been joining me for Bedtime Stories with Miss Christine. And continue your challenges. We love you. Jesus loves you. Have a good night. Bye.